Hi, everybody.
Hi, everybody.
I'm Scott.
I'm John.
And we're married.
Happy Pride.
Happy Pride. And the camera just shook because I think our dog hit it, but that's okay.
No earthquakes.
No. So we are back. We have a new audio setup. So we have a new microphone. So we'll see how that goes. Previously, we were wearing lapel mics, and
those kind of
those
stopped
got a buzz.
working. Yeah.
Well, they got a buzz in them.
Right.
And so now we have a desk standing mic.
Which makes you feel like an old-timey newscaster.
Yes.
But whatever.
Hopefully it'll work.
Yep.
Yeah. So, hope everybody's doing well. I am going to pull up my notes here. So we are a knitting podcast. And technically we're a knitting YouTube show. And we talk about knitting and show our knitting off. And then the second half of our show is typically movie reviews, and we will be doing that today as well.
Yay.
So,
what are you drinking?
I'm drinking a Moscow Mule.
I'm drinking a White Russian.
Oh, interesting.
I guess it's in honor of whatever happened in Russia yesterday.
Oh my gosh.
I'm
trying to wrap my head around it, trying to understand it when I read the articles, but I still don't get it. So I have a funny little thing I want to do real quick.
Okay.
So I know that most people have heard about AI and artificial intelligence and how that's going to take over the world and we're all going to lose our jobs and blah, blah, blah. So my company, I work in IT, and the company I work in healthcare, and the company that I work for is really trying to embrace AI and be at the forefront of AI, and I think that...
Are we going to make this whole podcast with AI?
No, but, I mean, not exactly. But I think a lot of people are afraid of it, and I have been afraid of it, but I'm less afraid of it like as we talk about it and do more with it at work. But there is one AI tool through Google that you can use that's similar to ChatGPT. ChatGPT, if you're not familiar, is like a thing where you can go on and ask it questions and say things like, write my term paper on, To Kill a Mockingbird or whatever, and it'll spit out a term paper. So I just wanted to demonstrate for people, and if this helps anybody, I asked... So, ChatGPT is the one everybody talks about. There's another one called Google Bard that does the same thing.
Like BRD, like I'm in a...
Like Shakespeare.
Okay.
Bard. Yeah, or you're a Dungeons and Dragons character who plays a I was going to say mandolin.
Or a lute or a harp. Yeah.
So, I asked Bard, Google Bard, to generate the introduction to a knitting YouTube show. And so we're going to pretend that. So, hi everyone and welcome to my channel. I'm Scott and I'm a knitting enthusiast. I love everything about knitting, from the simple act of creating something with my own hands to the feeling of warmth and comfort that a finished project brings. In this episode, I'm going to show you how to cast on using the long-tail cast-on method. This is a great method for beginners because it's easy to learn and it produces a very secure cast-on. I'll also give you some tips on how to choose the right yarn and needles for your project. And of course, I'll show you how to cast on in both right and left-handed directions.
Do you know how to do that?
No.
Okay.
So if you're ready to learn how to cast on, let's get started. So I just want everybody to use this as an example of how AI is cool and it can get your mind, that's what I've been using it for, is if I have to write a report at work or I have to write an email and I just get stuck and I don't know how to use it. I don't know where to start.
Right.
I'll say, can you give me an example of an email where you're trying to send a difficult, communication about X. Right. And it'll just give me an example, and then it's not writing the email for me, but it's getting me started.
Ideas. Yeah.
So sorry, didn't mean for this to be an AI podcast, but it's just
Or is it an AI podcast where AI is making us sing like say positive AI because
That's right.
we're AI.
It's plugged into our brains.
Right.
All right.
Funny.
So yeah, that was our.
That's actually so. Like the first sentence is actually like pretty good.
Yeah.
The feeling of warmth and comfort that a finished project brings.
Yeah.
That's really.
Then I'm going to tell you how to learn, or I'm going to tell you how to do a long tail cast on method, both right and left-handed directions. I didn't. Do people knit left-handed? I mean, other than. What I mean by that is, do people knit? I mean, I know the difference between like British or American versus continental, but like, do people? Can you knit left-handed? I don't know what that means.
I would assume it'd be.
I mean, would everything be reversed?
Sure.
I don't know.
I don't know. I know you can knit backwards.
Yeah.
But anywho.
Yeah. So we typically go through and talk about what projects we have in progress, what projects we've started,
any acquisitions,
stuff like that. So I don't even know how much I have because last time we were here, you talked about. Hang on, I want to pull up the last episode real quick.
So like I'd finished my hat.
So last time you talked about the bounce blanket.
Okay, done.
I talked about Mr. Bakery Bear, which basically all I have is the arms to put on, but I'm going to talk about that next time. You talked about the Hazelfern Socks.
Yep.
I talked about the Acadia beanie that I'm doing for Geo. And no.
I did the Acadia beanie.
I then I am doing the Badlands beanie for my friend Geo, and then that was all we talked about.
Yeah.
So
I have 2 new projects. No. I have 2 new projects. One from last time, and then a pick-me-up. A restart.
Okay.
So.
And you know what most of mine is about.
Yes.
So why don't you do one of yours, then I'll do my whole big segment, and then you do yours.
Your whole big segment. You think you're so important.
No, I just mean it's a lot of the same thing.
All right.
It's the same.
So this is kind of fun. This is one of the reasons I like having a podcast, YouTube show. So I think last time we brought about podcast, I can't remember who said it in the comments, and I apologize. They're like, whatever happened to that really lovely color work cardigan you were working on? And I'm like,
oh, somebody said that?
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, the Thorn. I'm like, I'm going to get that back out. So I've restarted the Thorn. So it is by Rowan Knits. It's not Jared Flood. It's not.
No, because he's not Rowan Knits.
No. But it's someone name is like Jared Flood.
Hang on.
Martin Storey. Yeah. Rowan Knits. I'm making it with, I think. God, I don't even know. I think I made it with Rowan, but I'm not sure. So anyway,
you don't even know what? No, because this is all Cascade 220.
Oh, it's all Cascade 220. So, it's a cardigan that's knit in sections, then sewn together.
Wait, hang on. There's like a weird.
Yeah. So this is the back, which is done. Really, I really like these 2 colors. I don't know what they are. And then
I think with Cascade 220, it's like tan, orangish brown,
right, or
blue.
It's got a number or something like that.
Yeah,
and then where I left off, so I've been knitting on this. So I've been knitting on this since I think 2018.
This is so heavy.
I know.
This is going to be so nice.
Yeah,
in Minnesota
that's one of the things I like about color work is you get the color, but it's also they're like super cozy because it's like It's 2 layers of fabric, which I think is why they did it in the first place. So there's the back, which is this kind of really cool. It reminds you of Q*bert.
Yeah.
If y'all know what that is. And then
Video game from the 80s.
And then there's a front and a back. One of the front panels.
Is that how that works?
What?
A front and a back?
Sorry. A left and a right side panel.
Is that how a cardigan works? That there's a left side and a right side?
No, not a jury in the world. So anyway, one of the panels is done the same one of the panels, one of the sleeves is done this in this same pattern, and the other panel is done in this pattern, which is kind of like a...
It's not exactly a reverse.
It's almost an inverse, but it's not quite.
Yeah.
So this is where I am right now. It's almost the part where I get to start the shaping for the front and the armhole shaping. And yeah, it's going really well. What I'm trying to do with this is every day in the morning do 2 rows. Because it's really involved. And so you can't sort of sit and do it. But if I get up and do 2 rows in the morning, I make good progress. And, I would love to have this done by this winter. But, like, this is like the 4th winter I've said I've done this winter.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to, make promises that'll just make me sad. But yeah, it's basically knit in parts, and then you knit, this is where the, this edge is where the button band goes, and then once you piece it all together, you sort of knit the button band with this blue. So very excited.
Oh, that'll be nice.
Yeah, I really like the pattern for the color work a lot. I think it's really cool. And yeah, it's just kind of nice to have a thing that's slowly going. So yeah, thank you for, again, I apologize. I should have looked up who was the person who asked about it in our comments, but thank you, because it actually prompted me to take it out and start working on it again. And I think with like difficult projects like this, sometimes you just get frustrated and you need to take a break from them so you can sort of fall back in love with them when you're doing them again. And so that's kind of what I'm doing.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I'm at with, I think I have at least 2 sweaters that that are in progress, and I think the problem that I run into is that I'm okay with putting them down, but when I go back to pick them back up, I don't do a very good job of, like, leaving myself a note as to where I left off.
Yeah. Oh, that's a funny story. I'll show you this right now. So, obviously there's a chart, and I don't know if you can tell, like, right here.
I can't see it, so I don't know what you're talking about.
Like, right there. So, normally, it's like... dun, dun. So, clearly, I picked up right back here.
Hang on.
I picked up... right here is where I picked up again, and clearly I thought I was in a different part of the chart than I actually was. But I don't think it's going to matter. I think it's a pretty...
Oh, yeah. Who cares?
Yeah. It's just a really cool pattern. Yeah. So, anyway. So, this is exciting. I figure, I might knit the sleeves after this. I don't know. I'm trying to decide how to make it... I think getting the biggest parts out of the way first is good. So I'll do the next front and then the sleeves. The sleeves should take like 5 seconds because they're really small, I think. I don't know. All right. So that's Thorn, Martin Storey.
Okay. So I don't know if we talked about this last time or not, but I had expressed interest in the Stitch in Time blanket by Kay from the Bakery Bears.
Kay Jones.
Kay Jones. And my mom, Betty Ann, she was here visiting for a while, and she purchased
Then we had to ask her to leave.
We did. We're like, get the hell out of our house.
We love you.
Love you, Betty Ann. Love you, mean it. Hope you win. So she bought me the pattern, and I've kind of gone crazy with it. So, all right. So
recombobulated.
Found this, what I was looking for. So Betty Ann had bought me the pattern, and so the pattern is called a Stitch in Time, and you basically make mitered squares that are attached to one another. It's intended for fingering weight yarn, and the thought is you use up scraps that aren't big enough for a full project. You knit mitered squares that are, you knit one and then you pick up part of that one, and then, you just kind of, they're all attached, and then you put a white border around them, and then you attach them together like quilt squares, kind of. So I finished my first... There's definitely a right side and a wrong side. So I finished my first... Well, I finished the first 4 squares. So, sorry, what am I trying to say?
First 9
the
squares?
first 9 squares, and I've started the border. And I think what I'm going to do as I do these is I'm going to talk about the different yarns. This yarn in what would be the top left, I don't know what that yarn is. I just had it. And then down here in the little corner, I ran out of this yarn, so I did a little similarly in the same color theme, but not the same yarn. Then this middle one on the top row is Moana, and so most of these I'm not going to remember who the dyer was, but it was Moana themed yarn. It was sock yarn. Then this yarn is an alpaca yarn, and it was a sample from. It was a little bitty skein, and it was a sample from. Who's the one that had the pop-up shop in Stephen B's?
Blue Sky Fibers?
Blue Sky Fibers. And then this maroon one down here, it's the same thing. It was a little sample skein. Then this one here in the very middle was... I can't remember.
No idea.
Yeah. I feel like it was something that you did a project out of, but I can't remember.
Possibly.
This one here is... Knitted Wit. And John used this for his... Doodler shawl. This one down here, I don't remember. I think it was a Japanese yarn, but it's got a lot of silk in it.
Is it Shibui?
No. No, it was a random one I hadn't really heard of before. But and then this middle one here is... Yarn Cafe Creations, I'm pretty sure. And it was a yarn that I knit, the very first pair of socks that I ever knit for John, I knit out of this yarn.
Yeah.
And then this yarn was a skein of yarn, also Yarn Cafe Creations, that my mom gave me when this was the first yarn that I ever knit a pair of socks out of, and they were way too big. I did like 72 stitches on a 2.5 millimeter needle. They were way too big. But this was the yarn that... was the first yarn I ever knit socks out of. And then I definitely wanted to have like a white border around it. And so I reached out to Nancy from Trilogy Yarns, and she sent me some perfect yarn. It's her glamorous base. And it's 80% merino, 20% nylon, 400 yards for 100 grams, and so I bought...
That's what it looks like, caked up, right?
Yeah. So I bought a few skeins so that I would have it for the full blanket. So I don't have any timing goals. It's fun to knit these little mitered squares.
How long does it take you to do one of those little tiny squares?
I don't remember.
Like an episode of Voyager?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I don't remember. But... I'm just really excited about this project to use up a bunch of yarn. So what I've done is, like you can see here, I've got yarn that's, little bits and pieces here and there, and I've been just pulling out bits and pieces of skeins that I have. And then I went to, and there's this one here. I went to, and this one. Okay, so, and this mini set is... from Coats and Company or Coats and Co. It's sock yarn. It doesn't really have a name. So, but anyway, it's a total of about 1, 2, 3. So it's 100 grams in this. 100 grams, 437 yards. And so, yeah. So I bought these just because I thought it'd be also fun to buy mini skeins and incorporate, because I go to, I go to yarn stores and I see mini skein sets and I'm like, what would I ever use those for?
Right.
I don't really have. I know there's lots of different patterns you can do with mini skeins, but I'm never really.
We should do a stash dive because, I think I have a ton of mini skeins out there that I've just. These are cool, and then never know what to do with them, except for, toes and heels, which I don't do because I don't knit socks.
Right.
So
while I was at Darn Knit Anyway, we have a friend. We have friends who are having a baby in October. And so I was like, I want to knit them a baby blanket. And so I went, and they had a stash of like yarn. I don't know if it was on sale or what exactly, but it was, well, I'm sorry, it was on sale. I don't know if it was being clearanced out or whatever. I think it was being clearanced out because I don't think the yarn is made anymore. But I bought several skeins of it. It's Babe Soft Cotton Chunky. And it's Euro Yarns, I think, is the name of the Euro Yarns, and it's Babe. So I don't think this yarn is made anymore. This color I'm not going to use in the baby blanket. I thought this was going to be my board. Oh, sorry. So I picked up the yarn, and I was like, I know what I'll do. I'll do that Stitch in Time blanket, but I'll do it, rather than doing 9 squares, I'll do 4 squares. And
with chunky yarn.
With chunky yarn. And so I have completed 1 square. So this is what the square looks. Same exact pattern, but it's chunky yarn. And so and the reason that the borders are thicker here and thinner here is because these thicker borders are going to be on the outside of the blanket, and then this border is going to be in between the squares, and I'm going to piece these squares together. That's how the pieces come together. And so this is half the size of this. So then once you piece it all together, all of the between each section is going to be the same size. So this is 1 square. I'm going to do, I think, 2 squares wide, or 2 blocks wide, and 3 blocks long.
Yeah, that'll be nice.
I think is what I'm going to do for the baby blanket. It's. I mean, the blanket definitely has a right side and a wrong side. Because it looks so great here, and then on this side it looks obviously like handmade, but
it is handmade.
Yeah. So I think it'll be fine.
Yeah.
So I bought this, and then I ended up not liking, because they had a limited number of colors. I think, again, because I think the yarn is not made anymore. But so, like I said, I had bought this color initially to do the border, but it looks very drab.
It looked very, very sad for a baby blanket, right?
Yeah. So I went ahead and bought Cascade.
Vintage Barocco.
Vintage Barocco, that's what it is, not Cascade. Vintage Chunky.
Yeah.
For the white. And so I've got. So there's this orange, which I've already used. What is this called? It doesn't really matter. I don't think I'm going to look for all. This is Jack-o'-lantern. I did. Have I used this blue already? Yeah.
Yes.
This is Baby Teal.
Baby Teal.
This is, I haven't used this one in there yet. This one is Baby Blue. This one is pink. I don't have the ball band right now.
Right.
Oh my gosh, why is this? There we go. So this is pink. This is yellow. Have I used the yellow in there?
Yes.
And this one is, it's just for fun. What's the color? Baby Yellow.
Baby Yellow.
This is the Baby Teal. Just another skein of it I bought. Then I've got this one, which I don't think I've used yet.
It's Baby Magenta.
This is just magenta. This is, I've used this one already. It's the red color.
Baby Red.
Cherry red.
Okay. I like baby. I like the fact you just baby in front of a color and it means something different.
And then this is green. It's Baby Teal. Baby Pink.
Baby Pink.
Limelight. Okay, this one's Limelight. So I've started my second square, and I'm just putting random. That's what I'm doing, is just putting random colors together. So what's interesting, I mean, those of you who've done mitered squares are probably like, yeah, duh, Scott. But it's amazing to me because it starts out like a line, and then as you do the decreases, which are in the center of the square, it pulls the yarn up this way.
It's like this little decrease line.
Yeah, but it starts out like this, and as you go, it just pulls it together to make it a square. So it's like the perfect mindless knitting. And that's the kind of knitting that I like, more so than like having to follow a pattern. And so the other thing is, I was always intimidated by trying to do a blanket in knitting. I've done blankets in crochet, and it goes so much faster. And so this is a good way, using this chunky yarn and this pattern. It's a fun way to do a blanket. So
no, that's very cool. I like this a lot. I like the colors a lot. It's going to be very, very cool.
Yeah. So that's the main thing I'm working on. Although I'm also working on my friend Gio's hat. I'll do that real quick. I'm not sure if I showed it last time.
I think you'd picked out the pattern and the yarn and maybe not shown it yet.
Yeah. So that pattern is it's in the National Parks, Knitting the National Parks book by Nancy Bates. The pattern is Badlands Beanie. Badlands Beanie. So here is and I always do, rather than whatever the patterns call for, I do a folded over brim where you knit the brim and then you fold it over, and when you knit the first row of the hat, you pick up the both loops from each side of the brim that you folded over, and then you can't really see yet, but there's going to be outlines of mountains amongst the kind of like sky and sand kind of tannish color. So this is the color for the band, and this is Madeline Tosh, and the colorway is Rye Bourbon.
Okay.
Probably should have just like kept my finger in there or something before I did this. Okay, so that's Rye Bourbon. Then this is gonna be like the background, and I think it's just two colors. It's the
Rye Bourbon in that.
The Rye Bourbon, which is also going to be the outlines of the mountains, and then this one, which is also Madeline Tosh, and the colorway is Silver Lining.
Okay.
So I like how it picks up colors from it's got blue, a little tiny bit of blue. It's hard to see grayish blue in there. In addition to like rusty colored speckles and stuff like that, and so I think it went really well. And I think I gave Gio two options for the background color, and he picked this one. I think the other one had like more green in it or something. So that's the other thing I'm working on actively.
Super.
Yeah.
That was our dog.
All right. So why don't you take it away, John?
All right. So, do you have anything else you're working on?
No.
All right, so it's my portion of the show. So I got 3 projects to talk about.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I have 2 pair of socks I'm working on, both of which are halfway done. The first one is the Hazelfern sock by, I think, Jared Flood, knitted with Brooklyn Tweed Peary. So for this one, I have finished one of the socks, so I'm going to put on the blocker for her to look at and admire. Here it is. Definitely love this sock. I think it's very, very cool. And lots of fun techniques on this. Lots of cabling, lots of increases, decreases. This little bit right here, this kind of, I think I'm pointing. Yeah, this sort of like line of styles called the whale stitch, which has been super, super fun. And then it's got a really cool pattern for the heel flap. Heel flap. So yeah, done with the first sock. So very happy about that.
This is the heel flap. This is the heel turn. And that's the heel... Well, you can't see it.
Yeah.
That's the heel turn, and then that's the heel gusset.
Yeah. So, super fun. I'm making this for Scott's dad's wife, Shannon. And so these have a due date of August when they come for the state fair. So, got the first one done. And just have started on the second one. So, really fun project. Definitely takes attention, though. So it's definitely not a mindless knit. So I was definitely doing a bit where, kind of like what I was doing with the Thorn sweater, where I'd wake up every morning and do 4 rows of this. And so the Thorn sweater sort of taken that place, but I'll get started back on this again, because I really do like it.
So I know we've talked about this 1,000 times. They don't actually list a specific designer for these, do they?
No, they do. I think it's by Jared Flood. I will double check. I'm just assuming, but I mean, that could not be correct. So anyway, really fun pattern. Very cool. Definitely keeps you entertained while you're doing it because there's just so much going on. But I think it really comes out really, really well. So that is very, very fun. And we'll keep chugging away on those. The other sock I'm working on, which I'm kind of like, why do I have 2 pairs of socks going? I don't like knitting socks.
Designer Jared Flood.
Okay. Okay, my pattern back, so I'm going to put it back. Very lovely. So the other pair of socks I'm working on is from Very Pink Knits. It's basically a pattern which is like learn to knit toe-up magic loop socks. So for this one, I am using, the yarn I'm using is Trilogy Yarns, and it is Smells Like a Goat, or Smells Like a Goat. And so basically you start, this is the thing, you start with a toe right here, and this initial toe is done through wrapped turns and short rows, and then you basically do, yeah, anyway, and then you sort of join it all together, and then this is, I'm making the foot right here. And here is a completed version of the sock. This is from...
Oh, I forgot you'd already completed one.
I know. So this one, let's see. Yeah, so this is for me, and I have sizable feet, so most of the sock is the foot, because basically what you do is you take the yarn, split it into 2, what would you call that? 2 balls of the same weight, and then you sort of knit it out. So this is...
Wait, what now?
So for this pattern, you take a skein of yarn.
Oh, you've put it on backwards.
What do you mean?
Because your foot is so big?
I know, I did that on purpose.
Oh.
So basically, because my foot is, I have a size 12 foot, like it ends up being mostly foot and then a little bit of thing. A little bit of ribbing. The one thing that I found out when I did this, and I tried this on, is this right here is really tight on me. So I think when I do this one, what I'll do is I will add a few, like an extra 4 stitches in there to the cable and do that.
Yeah, I mean, I personally think that you could, like down here, add 6 stitches.
Right.
Until it gets to the cuff, and then decrease them down, or as it gets closer, decrease it, or even like as you do the first few rows of cuff, decrease it down. So you'd end up with this thing like this on the top of the sock,
which will give me more room to put my foot on.
Or the other thing you could do is as you know what would be better is as you get around here, just add 6 stitches spaced around.
Okay.
And then when you get to the thing, decrease the stitches as you do the first couple rounds of ribbing. Then it's distributed across so you don't end up with this weird
lump, right?
Yeah, once you pull the socks on.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. Like right before they goes to the heel.
Yeah.
And it's kind of fun because the heel is done. The heel is basically done the same way as the toe through short rows and stuff like that. So it's actually, it's a really easy, quick pattern. This is my watching TV pattern right now. So it is very, very good.
Hey, so John, what color would you say this yarn is? What 3 colors are in this yarn? 4 colors.
The colors that goats smell like. I would say there's some purple. Trilogy yarns, there's some purple.
I don't see any purple.
Well, you're not letting the people at home play. Purple.
No.
Purple, maybe some yellow and some
Point
white.
to the yellow.
Like right here.
Okay, good job.
And the white.
I don't see any purple.
What is this? What's the main?
Blackish, dark gray.
Okay, sure.
Although it's got enough blue in it to where I think you could make an argument that it's purple.
I'm making an argument that's got purple. So there. Anyway, I recommend this pattern. It's very well written. There are YouTube tutorials for it when you buy it.
And I put a link in the description
good.
to the website where it looks like it's a free pattern.
Sure. I don't remember. So yeah, good. Again, just sort of learning about, socks and the fact that I need extra room in my foot to put it on.
You can buy it on her website.
Yeah. But again, it's really good, and the video tutorials are quite good. So that is good. So there's my 2 pairs of socks I'm working on. Other thing, so I have 2 acquisitions, and we'll start with the first one first, which is kind of on its own. So our friends, our neighbors, just came back from Ireland, and while they were in Ireland, they got us a project bag. So it was in the Aran Islands, and the bag is just a cute little canvas bag with all this sort of different kind of Aran stitch patterns on it. So thank you, Brian and Kate and Josie, for thinking of us while they were in Ireland. So that was super fun.
Well, the Aran Islands are next to Inisheer.
What?
The Aran Islands are next to Inisheer. Or is Inisheer one of the Aran Islands?
It's one of the Aran Islands, I think.
Oh, there's Inisheer, there's Inishmaan.
Yeah.
And then it says Aran Islands on that island.
Yeah.
Inishmore, Inishman, Inishmere,
yeah.
And then they're all the Aran Islands. Got it.
So anyway, that was really lovely. The next thing...
I assume that you're using that as a...
Yeah, as a rescue tool, I think, for the socks. So the other thing that happened is our friends Justin and Caleb used to live in Wisconsin, now live in Switzerland. And Caleb, they were home for a little bit, and Caleb was doing a destashing. And he had like 20 skeins of Brooklyn Tweed Quarry. In this color.
So I think you said it's a yarn they don't make anymore.
Well, it's discontinued because something happened with the mill that was making it.
Oh.
So they're going to make more when they get a new mill to make it, I think, is what's going on. So I bought all these from him, which is really nice. Always nice to get. And I'm like, I need to make a sweater out of this. So what I'm doing is there is a pattern. Again, I just said, like, you know what, I'm going to do it's always kind of fun to do a pattern that was designed for the yarn. So what I'm making is, it's a pattern from Brooklyn Tweed, and it is called the Spearheads.
It says that Quarry will return with a brand new color palette in summer of 2023.
Okay. Well, not quite yet. And it's called the...
It is summer of 2023.
I know. I mean, not just barely, because summer just started 2 days ago.
Yeah.
So, it's called Spearheads. It's an Icelandic yoked sweater. And so I'm using the Quarry as the base color. And then I went to Stephen B. and I picked up this color, which is Woolstock, Blue Sky Fibers or Woolstock Tweed Aran thing. And this is going to be the, if you look at the pattern, that's going to be what outlines the yoked pattern in it. So very exciting. I like how these two colors go together. They're both sort of tweedy. This is bulky, I think.
I don't think that one's tweedy. That one's tweedy.
Yeah.
But
it's got this does specks in it.
It does?
Yeah, like it's got those black specks right there.
I guess. Yeah. I think if that is
this is more Okay. So I think they go well together. This is a bulky. I think Quarry is bulky or chunky. I can't remember. And this is Aran weight.
It's chunky.
Chunky. So this is Aran weight, but like they're pretty close in size, and I've been able to swatch them.
Do you have a... Oh yeah, here we go. So let's just look at the difference here. Well, of course the content will make a difference, but this is 3 to 5 stitches per inch.
And this is 3 to 3.5 stitches per inch.
Yeah.
And it says to use 10s and 11s.
Yeah, and this is 9s to 11s.
Yeah.
So they're pretty much...
Yeah, so I'm knitting the body...
How many yards per 100 grams?
This is 200 yards.
Yeah, this is 190 yards per 100 grams, so it's close.
Yeah, so it's pretty close. I have the swatches in here. So this is... This might have been the fail swatch, but it kind of looks like this. With the pattern and stuff. So I have just started on it, and I'm doing the first sleeve right now.
It's gonna be so awesome.
I know. I love the feel of it, and I think it was just nice because like I love Brooklyn Tweed. I love their yarn a lot. It's a little on the spendy side, and so I think I would have had a hard,
especially a sweater's quantity.
Yeah, so I think I would have had a hard time buying a sweater's quantity, but with Caleb destashing, it was I have almost enough in that for 2 sweaters. Mm-hmm. So I feel really good about that. And yeah, and thank you. I forget who the person Stephen B was who just walked me through, because I was very worried about it not like being enough and it would be weird. But she's like, you know what, it'll be fine.
You mean different enough?
Different enough.
Contrasting enough.
No. The width, the weight of the yarns would work well together.
Gotcha.
And so we talked about it, like, well, maybe you could do it with a mohair. But I'm like, well, that would mean that your yoke was all fuzzy and the rest of your scarf thing. I think if this were
I think that would have been okay. But I think it's going to look nice and clean.
Yeah, I think so. But I think if this was a smaller yarn, I would do this with mohair, because then you have a whole fuzzy sweater. But because this is just the yoke, you would have this like weird, like your sweater would be like fuzzy and then not fuzzy.
I don't think that would be that weird.
I think it would be very weird.
Okay, you just offended all the people that have fuzzy color work, mohair color work, and non-mohair in the body.
Okay. To you, I apologize. But anyway, it's coming along.
Such a disaster.
Coming along really, really well. And I did a tubular cast on for the sleeves, and I love. It was a pattern. Shibui Knits has some pretty good tutorials, so I took their tutorial and did the. It's basically
is it Shibui that I think went out of business?
I don't know. So anyway, doing this right now, and I'm on this increase row. Basically, this part where you're doing the sleeve and it increases. So it's going really well. Pretty quick knit. One of the fun things about using bulky yarn is you do 3 rows and you have a ton of fabric. So that's really exciting. So yeah, that's what I'm working on. I've decided, like, since I did that last yoke sweater, I really like yoke sweaters. I think they're really, really fun and cool. And especially like doing them for the last one I did, which was that, I don't remember that one pattern, but like where you do like all the boring stuff and then you knit it together and then you have the fun yoke to end up with, which is super fun.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think Shibui doesn't make yarn anymore.
Oh. Well, they have...
The company still exists, and it looks like they're doing life coaching.
Shibui... That's got to be something different.
No. No, it's not. Look. Shibui Knits. Mm-hmm. And Shibui Life is their...
Oh.
But they have their patterns and stuff up here still.
Interesting.
But then they have like a... Shibui Life, which looks like a life coaching thing.
Okay. You go, Shibui.
All right.
So that is, I believe, everything that we're working on.
All right. Well, yeah, I mean, I've got like 30 projects that I've started and
Right.
I'm not actively working on, but
Right.
I'm sorry if you guys are hearing this weird scraping noise. There's like sand on the bottom of my laptop or something.
Go.
Okay, so
I think before we talk, so we have a mega mix of a movie segment.
we have 3 movies to review.
So I think...
before we get started on that, shout out to Annika and her husband, which I don't remember his name, who, in another one of those weird small world things, she watches our podcast, our YouTube show, and she and her husband have been watching along the movies, which I was curious if people actually did that, where they would go and watch the movies that we're watching, and then, sit through the commentary that we did after the fact. And she said that she and her husband do that, and she happens to be a friend of a friend. And she was also at the wedding of that friend where I officiated the wedding. So, small world thing. But shout out to Annika.
I feel like we should, this week I feel we should apologize to anyone following along, because I felt like the 2 movies, the Razzie movies, were especially not good. But anyway, we'll get into that in a second. I think I need to refresh my cocktail.
You do that. Okay, we'll take a break.
Okay.
Welcome back now to the movie segment. We're going to use our friend Google Bard to give us our intro. Hi everyone, and welcome to my movie channel. I'm Scott.
Feel like it's our movie channel?
Well, not according to Google Bard. I think Google Bard wants to get rid of you. I'm Scott.
I feel like, Skynet.
I'm Scott, and I'm here to talk about the best and worst movies of the year. This year, the Best Picture winner... I didn't tell it that it was a different year, but this year, the Best Picture winner was Platoon.
Yay!
It's a great film, but it's not without its flaws. And of course, there were plenty of terrible movies released this year as well. So in this episode, I'm going to be reviewing both the Best Picture winner and the worst movie of the year. I'll give you my thoughts on each film, and I'll let you know which one I think is worth your time. So if you're ready to find out which movies are worth watching and which ones are best avoided, let's get started.
That's a pretty solid intro.
That's the thing, is you can use it to get ideas.
Yeah. It's a good, I think what it is a really good structure, right? You could build on that of whatever. Because I always get, when I'm writing, it's the first 3 words, and okay, what am I saying in this paragraph, and this is a pretty good, you could fill that in pretty easily and make it your own.
Well, and so I think I've talked about this on the channel before, but a couple years ago, 2.5 years ago, I became the manager of my team at work, and so I'm managing people now. And I can get an idea of what, if I need to have a difficult conversation with an employee, I know what I want to convey, but it's literally the first 5 words that I can't figure out, because it's
hey dummy.
Hey dummy, you suck, and here's why.
Right.
And obviously that's not how I feel, but it's how do I start?
Right.
And so that's another way this can be helpful.
Great.
But anyway, okay.
Super fun.
So we've got, you did the best...
And one of the worst.
And one of the worst, and I did one of the worst. So do you want to start with the best, and then I'll do my worst, and then you do your worst?
Yes, that'll work good.
Okay.
That'll work good.
That'll work good. Real good.
So this is the 1987 Oscars and Razzies, which are movies released in 1986.
Razzies as in the Golden Raspberry Awards.
Yeah. Oscars as the Academy Awards.
Yes.
So the winner that year was Platoon, directed by Oliver Stone. A couple of things about it. It was released in December 19th, 1986. The budget was $6 million.
Okay.
Which blows my mind.
Oh, wait, hang on. I want to do the whole thing where you translate it to what that means now.
Yeah.
So that would be $41 million.
Yeah.
In today's dollars.
Yeah. But, it did not look... so they filmed it on the Philippines, so I don't know if that made it easier or whatever. But, when I saw the budget, and then I saw the budget for Under the Cherry Moon, I was like, well, half the money well spent. So yeah, $6 million. It was shot in the Philippines, and it made that's important later. I don't know, but the revenue it made $138 million,
which is in today's dollars $379 million.
Yeah, so made a lot of money. I remember watching this Academy Award ceremony. And like it sort of swept everything. Well, it won Best Picture, Best Director, like film editing, and maybe Best Original Screenplay. I think. Don't quote me on the last one. And then
we just recorded it for all of time, so I hope you're not wrong.
I might be wrong about Best Original Screenplay. And it was based on Oliver Stone served in Vietnam. And it was sort of based on his experiences while he was in Vietnam. And he sort of wrote it as it's an anti-war film. I think that's probably the best way to put it. It's a very graphic and often hard to watch film because what's going on is pretty much horrifying the whole time. Mm-hmm. So anyway... and then Tom Berenger and Willem Dafoe, who are both in it, got nominated for Best Supporting Actor. They lost to Michael Caine from Hannah and her sisters. So the other nominees for Best Picture that year were A Room with a View, which we just watched, you for the first time.
Yes.
Hannah and Her Sisters, Children of a Lesser God, and The Mission.
Children of a Lesser God, was that about children with Down syndrome?
No, it's about deaf folks. Marley.
Oh, that's
Matlin,
right. That's right.
Won Best Actress that year. I forget who won Best Actor. I can't remember. But it was funny because I've seen all of those movies except I've not seen Children of a Lesser God. But so let's see. But yeah, and I feel like it was definitely a Paul Newman for The Color of Money won Best Actor. So couple of little things, interesting things about the movie. Well, I'll just do a quick synopsis. So basically, Charlie Sheen is the main protagonist. It's based on his experiences. He's kind of a stand-in for Oliver Stone. So Oliver Stone dropped out of college when he was, I think, 19 or 20 and enlisted to serve in Vietnam. And
he volunteered. He was not drafted.
Yeah, he volunteered. And this kind of, that's very much what the Charlie Sheen character is doing. Mm-hmm. So, goes in and pretty quickly learns that, like, so I think that the first scenes are his, like, first day out in the field, if you want to call it that. And what was interesting, they were talking about, like, how he gets thrown into the situation and no one wants to teach him anything because they're like, you know what? We need to worry about the people who know what they're doing. And
you're not going to last.
You're not going to last long. So this guy who's like, thrown into a war zone and just like no clue what to do. So that's kind of the first bit of it. The second bit is kind of like they're on leave and he's bonding with there's the platoon is split into two contingents. One of which is led by Willem Dafoe, who's one of the sergeants, who's kind of the by the rules, the good angel, so to speak, right? And then the other side of the platoon is led by Tom Berenger, who's kind of the war is hell, I'm going to do what I need to do type stuff. And so the next chunk is this whole like really tough scene to watch where they go into a village where they suspect the villagers are working with the North Vietnamese. And, I would say atrocities happen. And the big thing that happens is the Tom Berenger character shoots a civilian. But there's other really terrible things that happen too.
Yeah.
And then what happens, the Willem Dafoe character, whose name's Elias, is going to report the Tom Berenger character to the military justice people because he killed a civilian, he shouldn't have done that, blah, blah. And then while they're out in another field, Tom Berenger he doesn't kill Willem Dafoe, but he shoots him and then leaves him behind.
Yeah.
So, and then there's a couple of scenes. Anyway, but the final scene is the platoon is put into this really like basically they're holding a area and it gets completely overrun by the North Vietnamese, and at some point in that, Charlie Sheen kills the Tom Berenger character, kind of as his idea of justice for what was done to the other person. So, so yeah, that's kind of the summary. A couple of fun things about it is before they started shooting, they were shooting in the Philippines. Some of the Vietnamese villagers were played by refugees from Vietnam who had settled in the Philippines.
Oh, wow.
Which that was actually kind of really interesting. There's this one scene where Charlie Sheen and another character like shoot at this character who is this sort of boy teenager who has cataracts. He's blind, and like they were talking about how that scene for the actors was so hard for them to do, and they went and got the other actor, the actor playing the Vietnamese boy. They got his cataracts fixed.
Oh, wow.
So I just like but before they even started the filming, they did this like 2-week boot camp, and essentially they ran around the jungle digging foxholes, doing all this stuff, and in the middle of the night they would like shoot blanks and wake them up. So the idea was to make the actors like in some small way have that sort of feeling that you would if you'd been out in the I keep saying field. I want to say I don't know what you say for that. Whatever, because they're running around the jungles in Vietnam trying to do stuff. So like when you see the actors, they look exhausted and whatever, and they're good actors, but like you sort of understand like where they're coming from. Like you definitely sort of feel like everyone looks awful.
Yeah.
Let's see. Johnny Depp is in it.
That's right.
For like 5 seconds, he plays a translator. And then a couple of other things, which is interesting. So Oliver Stone wrote the script in, I can't remember when, but he sent the script to Jim Morrison.
Oh, right. Yeah, I remember you telling me that.
And apparently Jim Morrison had the script with him when he died. No one knows if he read it or not, but, obviously that would have been an interesting movie.
Yeah.
With Jim Morrison playing the Charlie Sheen character. And then, of course, Oliver Stone went and made the Doors movie a couple of years later.
Yeah.
Let's see. The best performances, I thought Willem Dafoe and Tom Berenger were really, really, really good. I thought the cast was uniformly really, really good.
Yeah.
I didn't think there were any bad performances.
Yeah.
Even the people who you didn't like them because they were doing a good performance. Yeah. Knitting or fiber content, I don't recall any.
Yes.
Let's see. And personal history of the film, I'm pretty sure I'd seen it before. Like at some point I went back and watched all the like Vietnam movies. I watched that and like Full Metal Jacket and Born on the 4th of July and stuff like that. So I'm pretty sure I'd seen it before, but it was long enough ago that I couldn't remember. I certainly didn't see it in the theaters when it came out. Mm-hmm. And I think it would have been a very different experience seeing it in the theater.
Yeah, but you would have been 9. No, you would have been 12.
12, yeah. My parents were not going to take me to Platoon. And nor did I ask. So, Mommy, I have to go see Platoon. But yeah, and did it deserve the award it received that year? Yeah, I think so. I mean, I certainly like A Room with a View a lot. It's one of my favorite movies. Hannah and Her Sisters is a really good movie too. And The Mission, they're all good movies, but I think like Platoon is probably the best of that bunch. So, so I would say if you haven't seen it, it's definitely worth seeing.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my take on it. What did you think, babe?
So I had not seen it before.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't really know what to expect. Assumed it was a movie about Vietnam, but thought it just as easily could have, in my mind, it just as easily could have been like about Korea or World War II or whatever. I didn't really know what it was about. Mm-hmm. It was, it's one of those movies where it's kind of like, so much of what I watch on TV nowadays is like escapism.
Yes.
And, you know, science fiction, and like it's like I don't want to think about the real world.
Yeah.
I also feel that there's a category of movies that are made that are important to see, or at least to try to get some idea of what the reality is for people in certain situations. So like the movie that always comes to mind for me is Schindler's List.
Right.
Like you don't watch Schindler's List because it's like, oh, let's sit down and watch a fun movie. But it's an important movie to remember that time and what happened and everything. And so, you know, I've never understood, and I didn't live during this time, but I've never understood how the American public, why the American public were so, from what I understand, were so awful to the American soldiers. Especially ones that were drafted. I know that there were things that were done by the Americans in Vietnam to the Vietnamese people that were, you know, taken on an individual basis, like what happened in the movie, were horrible atrocities. But I've never quite understood that, and I still don't understand that, even after having watched this movie, because this is a really hard topic to talk about because I don't really feel like I'm coming from a perspective of knowing what I'm talking about, but it just seems to me after watching this movie, and I think this is probably how people who were alive then, like my parents and your parents, is that war was a bad situation for everyone. Right. For the soldiers that were there, for the American people, for the government, for obviously for the Vietnamese people. Right. You know, for just everybody involved, it was a bad situation. Right. And so, you know, I think the other thing that was an interesting discussion was about race and also about socioeconomic status and how there was this idea that the people that were drafted were of lower socioeconomic status and were minorities. Right. And so, and then if you were a rich white person, and I don't know how that works. Like,
well, it was interesting. So there's a character in the movie who is like the officer, right? So the guy who's in charge of the platoon, and like, you know, went through one of the academies and stuff like that, and like so it's like funny. So that character is actually shown in military like training. Like, here's how you do not behave as the officer leading enlisted people, right? Right. So, and then you have the Charlie Sheen character who's kind of, you know, from a much better place of privilege, like, you know, college educated or somewhat college educated. And then chose to go, right? As Badlands was drafted there. So, yeah, I don't know.
It's one of those things that's, you know, especially when I was younger. Right. Because I was born in 1977. And so, when did the Vietnam War end? In the 1970s?
Yes, because Nixon pulled us out.
Yeah, so...
And that would have been 1973.
And so it wasn't that many years before I was born that the war was happened. Right. But so I remember as I was younger, it was more of a topic of conversation. Right. But nowadays, people don't talk about the Vietnam War that much. No. And so it just seems like such a, I don't know. Thinking about this time in history and this war and all of that through the lens of where our country is now. Yeah. And like, it's hard to talk about this without just talking about politics, which is not, I don't want to talk about politics, but it's like, can you imagine trying to draft the American people into a war in Vietnam nowadays? Oh, yeah. People just wouldn't go.
Well, and people didn't go.
Well, true. But I mean... yeah, it's just...
Well, and like, I think one of the arguments for the draft was always that, like, and even though it fell disproportionately on whatever, is that everyone's subject to it, right?
Yeah.
So right now you have and again, whatever, is you have volunteer army, which ends up being the same thing. Like, it tends to be people who are trying to leg up through GI Bill and stuff like that, or, whatever, because it's one of those sort of paths that people can take. So you have, I don't know. I was excited I had a friend of mine whose dad was in Vietnam growing up, and that was kind of like, it's one of those, like, it was a very much like growing up, you sort of knew about it. Like my mom, when we went to DC, she found people went to high school who died in the Vietnam War and stuff like that. So,
well, yeah, and we can talk about the next.
Yeah,
movies. It's a very hard topic to discuss, and it's one of those movies that I'm glad I watched it because it was. You hear about it so much, but it's not like you enjoy watching it.
No. It's I would say, like, if you haven't seen it and you're interested in seeing it, it's definitely worth seeing.
It does a very good job of making you. I shouldn't say it that way. It does a very good job of giving you some small inkling of what it was like to be in that situation as the soldiers viscerally.
Yes. Yeah.
Like not having the resources that you need and feeling isolated and being terrified all the time because of being ambushed and the anger that you would feel because you're being attacked all the time and you're trying to it's just it did a really good job of that. And so that's why I brought up the whole Schindler's List thing is because I feel like it did a really good job of telling the story of the people that were the soldiers in that situation and kind of
giving you giving you that perspective. Which is like one of the things I think, like, he wrote this. There's a movie that came out in 1967 called The Green Berets, which had John Wayne in it, which I'm not sure, but, like, it seems like that movie might have been one of the which was basically propaganda. And I think he wanted to make a counter. It was also set in the Vietnam War, but it was contemporaneous, right?
Oh, okay.
And I think he just wanted to make a movie that kind of stood as a counterpoint to that, saying, like, actually, this is how it was. I've not seen The Green Berets, so I don't know anything about it, but
All right. Well, should we switch and talk about one of the worst movies of 1986?
I wouldn't say one of the worst movies.
Quite a departure from Platoon.
Yes.
And that is Howard the Duck.
God.
So I'm just going to start off and read through some of my notes about it, and then we can get into a deeper discussion about it. But it was released on August 1st, 1986. The director was Willard Huyck. I don't know how to say his last name, but it's Huyck, and he was like BFFs with George Lucas.
Right.
But right before this, he had written the screenplays for Best Defense, which I'm not familiar with what movie that is, and Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom,
which we watched part of last night
before we fell asleep in the middle of it.
Right.
Right after this, he wrote the screenplay for Radioland Murders.
Okay.
Which I'm not familiar with that, but so he was. He wrote more screenplays than he was a director.
Sure.
And so just to give you a brief synopsis of this crazy-ass movie. First of all, I knew this and then I forgot it, but it's based on a Marvel comic book series, Howard the Duck. And if you want to look at it this way, it was one of the first Marvel movies.
Yeah. And in one of the movies, one of the more recent ones, they have Howard the Duck in, like, the collector scene.
Oh yeah.
They show Howard. They have, like, he's stuck in, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
He makes a little cameo.
So Howard the Duck is hanging out in Duck World, where basically it's just like Earth, except instead of people, it's ducks, and everything is a pun on duck. And so he's sitting there after work, and he gets on Earth we're trying to do some kind of monitoring of the universe or something, and through some laser beam that gets shot out of a radio or out of a satellite dish, he gets sucked in back to Earth and lands in Cleveland. And then he goes to a club where Leah Thompson, the mom from Back to the Future, is playing. She's a rock band lead singer, and she's got these guys after her, and so he saves her from these bad guys, and then they become friends. And then there's a friend of hers that, like, this guy that has a crush on her that works in a lab, and happens to work in the lab where the scientist works that pulls him to Earth. And so then the doctor attempts to send Howard the Duck back to his planet, but accidentally opens some kind of portal and sucks this giant monster into the scientist's own body. And then they destroy the satellite dish, the spectroscope, to prevent other dark overlords from coming to Earth. And so that destroys Howard's opportunity to go back home to Duck World. And so then he decides he's going to become, or then he becomes, Howard the Duck becomes Beverly's rock manager. They hire Phil as an employee, and they go on tour, and he performs with her on stage.
I would just like to state for the record that the actual movie that 17 times more bananas than that synopsis.
Yes. And so the movie, the budget was $37 million.
Gee whiz.
It made $16 million.
Okay.
So it did not make its budget by a lot. So some of the interesting trivia is that at the I don't remember what George Lucas a producer?
He was.
Okay, because one of the factoids that I found was that George Lucas had just built his giant Skywalker Ranch complex, and he was going to use the money from this film to pay off his Skywalker Ranch.
Oops.
And so then, according to according to what I read, he was trying to sell off assets to make the money to pay off the ranch, and so he ended up selling. And this was according to Steve Jobs. Lucas ended up selling the new CGI animation division, which eventually turned into Pixar.
That's amazing. So Howard the Duck is the reason for Pixar.
Well, the reason that George Lucas doesn't own Pixar.
Gotcha.
Because he sold it off to make money for his ranch. We talked about we talked about discussing best performance and worst performance.
So, okay, can I say something?
Yeah.
I think the Duck is the worst performance.
Yes.
And I think it's because the puppet is totally unappealing.
Yeah, it's gross.
It's gross.
Not to mention the naked female ducks with the boobies hanging out. Duck boobies.
Yeah. I feel like... Okay. So when you see these movies that are complete fiascos, right? Which I think you could say How the Duck is a complete fiasco. You're like, well, what could have made this better? And I think if you had a better duck, it would have helped.
What if they had done the thing like they did with Roger Rabbit, where the duck was animated?
Well, so this is supposed to be animated.
Okay.
So the first, the proposal was an animated feature, and then they're like, we can make it for less money if we don't animate it, because animation is expensive.
Oh.
I think if they'd animated it would have been better, because then you would have had the Uncanny Valley stuff going on. And I think it would have been... They wouldn't have had the Uncanny Valley stuff going on, yeah.
And
I think, it would have been... You would have been in a different world, so, the jokes might have been less weird. I don't know. I think animated would have been better.
Well, and just the, scenes where Howard's in Leah Thompson's apartment and she's taking off her clothes, and then they're in the bed together, and, she's flirting. I'm just like, nope. So, I don't know about best and worst performance, but...
I think Tim Robbins is good at it. I think Leah Thompson does her best.
Yeah, but
Like I think Jeffrey Jones is fine. I think. I mean Anyway, I don't know.
I don't feel like it's worth discussing.
Yeah. Okay. Good point.
Knitting and fiber content, no.
No.
My personal history with the film. I've watched this movie probably 1,000 times in my life. Not because it's such a good movie. Because any of you that remember, if any of you that remember, back when cable TV came out and HBO and Showtime came out, the model at the time was they would pick, I don't know, 6, 8 movies for the month, and they would just play them over and over and over and over and over again. So you would just pick a time that you wanted to watch that movie. Well, we would turn it on, and then, we'd watch the same movies for that month over and over and over again. So it's like I've seen Beetlejuice like 1,000 times. So Howard the Duck was one of those movies that was in either Showtime or HBO rotation that I watched like 1,000 times. And so, so I know this movie inside and out, unfortunately.
I don't think I'd ever seen it.
Yeah.
I remember when it came out, and like one of the big things about it being marketed was like they wouldn't show you what the duck looked like. Like the movie poster was an egg with a beak. And so it was this big thing, like they're like withholding like what Howard the Duck was gonna look like.
Yeah.
And then I remember it came out and people were like, cause like I was 12 at the time, right? So they're like, oh my god, it's the movie where she has sex with a duck. Right. Whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did not see it when it came out.
So the question was, the last question our last question is, did it deserve the award it received?
Yes.
Well, I say yes, but I don't know what other bad movies were released this year other than
I will tell you, we have Under the Cherry Moon, which it co-won with, Blue City, which is some movie with Ali Sheedy and Judd Nelson where they do something. Cobra, which is a Sylvester Stallone shoot a movie, which I've seen, but I don't know anything about it. And then Shanghai Surprise, which was...
Poor Madonna.
Madonna and Sean Penn, which is apparently also pretty bad.
Poor Madonna. So anyway, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like when I watched it, I knew the movie from when I watched it when I was 9 or whatever. And so, when there's a movie that you've watched 1,000 times when you're 9 years old, you don't think about it being a bad movie.
Right.
And so I don't think of it as a bad movie. I think of it as this weird movie that we watched when we were kids, Right. It's not, I can't pull it out of that context.
When you were watching it, hi Harris. Hey buddy. No one can see you, Joe.
Wait, what now?
So, when you watched it when you were 9, did you like it?
I think I liked the sci-fi aspects of it. Because I was such a huge fan of space and Star Wars and Star Trek and stuff like that. So, you've got an alien duck and there's the monster that comes, that dark overlord that comes. But it's like, watching it now, I'm like... Oof.
Yeah, because yeah, I don't know. I was thinking about like movies when you're like a kid and like you don't have the same...
Well, there's a lot of slapstick in it.
Right.
Which
is funny.
46-year-old Scott... I have no interest in slapstick comedy.
Right.
So, like, that, it's kind of like my feeling about when there are big fight scenes in movies and it's punchy and I get real bored real quick. It's kind of like the same thing with slapstick. It's like, I have no interest in... So watching it this time, I would just be like...
The duck's doing something funny again. He's a duck.
He's rolling across the bar, and then he's going to punch the bad guy, and the bad guy's going to go, ay. I mean, it's just, like, so stupid. So, anyway.
Okay.
So, enough of that.
So, it's, like, interesting. Like, Howard the Duck is, like, known as one of the, like, big flops, right?
Yeah.
And, would you ever recommend anyone watch this movie?
No.
Okay. Just checking.
No.
Yeah. There's no reason, right?
No,
unless you're like just curious. Like, is the movie as bad as they say it is?
Yeah.
Yes.
But, you know, we always talk about movies that are fun bad or just bad. I mean, this one, I would say this one was more towards the fun bad than the next one we're going to talk about.
I would agree.
Which was just bad.
Just bad.
I wish I had never even watched the movie that we watched.
All right.
The other one.
So that movie, in 1987, there was a tie for worst movie, and the tie with Howard the Duck is Under the Cherry Moon, which is, you don't know, it is Prince's second movie. And so what happened with that is Prince made Purple Rain, right? Which made $1 kajillion, right?
And had no budget, so like the profit margin was huge.
Well, and the profit from the movie and also from the soundtrack, right?
Right.
So Prince made Purple Rain, and everyone's like, well, what's he going to do next? And I think Warner Brothers, who was both the movie studio and the music studio, was like, hey, Prince, here's $12 million. Have a nice day.
Go make a movie.
Go make a movie. I'm sure it'll be awesome. They had not looked at a script. They're like, here. So they gave Prince 12.
So this is the perfect example of, we listened to a podcast called Blank Check.
Right.
Where they talk about, in this case it's directors, who, something like that, the surprise hit, and it buys them the director's way into the ability to make
whatever they want.
Either whatever they want or bigger budget things.
Right.
And so this is a good example of a
so $12 million, twice the amount the Platoon cost.
That's crazy.
And it made $10 million, right? However, so Prince, as you may or may not know, is not really known as a film director. He's more known as a musician, clearly. But the album that the music, which is called Parade, Music from Under the Cherry Moon, went multi-platinum.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I will say this movie is not good, but the soundtrack is really good.
And it has Kiss.
Right, it's where Kiss came from.
Yeah.
Don't have to be rich to be my... whatever. So, although the movie didn't make...
Sorry.
Kiss. Although the movie didn't make any money, the soundtrack, I'm sure, made everyone very happy.
Gotcha.
Prince made a couple more movies, but this was one of 3 he was in. So he was in Purple Rain, this one, and Graffiti Bridge. So let's see. So I'll give you a little bit of a synopsis. So basically, Prince and his brother Tricky, who's played by Jeremy Benton, are musician gigolos hanging out in the French Riviera. The movie makes it very clear that Prince is very sexy.
Yes,
and it is shot in a way that you're supposed to be like, wow, this guy, so hot. Taste is subjective.
Because I'm sure there are lots of women on the French Riviera who are looking for a 5'2" man dressed in women's clothing. Lots of lace.
I will say,
outfits with the hips cut out.
Yeah, I will say the costumes that what Prince wears in this movie is uniformly awesome.
And awful.
Right? Time. It's
and I'm sorry, I know that you're trying to get through all the facts of the movie, but the whole weird, incestuous gay flirtation between he and his brother.
Yeah, it was. We couldn't figure out what was going on because one hand they're supposed to be brothers, but they seem to have this very flirty relationship, which seemed like if you were talking if two gay men were living together, the way they spoke felt like that.
Yeah.
So that was weird.
He'd literally be like, "Hey girl, why don't you come in here? Your girlfriend wants to talk to you on the phone." And then he'd like try to kiss him. And I mean, it was the weirdest shit
It was odd. So yeah, they're music gigolos. They're in the French musical gigolos. They're in the French Riviera. It's shot in black and white, so I think it's supposed to feel like a 1930s like screwball comedy, Fred and Ginger type thing. Except it's clearly set in present day because the like cars are from the the 80s, and they have boom boxes at one point. So that's a weird tonal thing. So Prince, like, there's this like rich heiress who's coming to the French Riviera for her birthday. Played by Kristen Scott Thomas, her first movie, and so
she was probably like 20 years old, and she looks
like 40. Yeah, she looked 40. And so she meets, I forget what the name of the character is. Like Charlie.
Which character?
What Prince's movie? What his character was called?
Keep
what is
talking.
Called? We'll call him Prince. So they meet. Sparks do not fly. There is
sparks do not fly.
But like there's been this like really like intense passionate affair, and like you're like, what are you guys doing? You don't have any chemistry. So they fall in love. Shenanigans happen. Her father is rich and doesn't want her running around with a low life gigolo like Prince.
Oh, so Prince's character is Christopher Tracy.
Right.
His brother's name is Tricky, or his brother's character's name is Tricky.
Right. So, and then there's like a side character called Mrs. Wellington, who's like one of the older rich women he's romancing, played by Francesca Annis, who I really like. And she's having an affair with Kristen Scott Thomas's father. And like, it's weird because it's like supposed to be like this funny screwball comedy, but it ends with him getting shot and dying. It's just not good. I know we live in Minnesota, which is
this is where Prince is from,
and he is a demigod around here.
Yeah.
And I don't disagree with that. Like I have always loved Prince's music. And again, if you listen to the soundtrack to this film, it's really good. But the actual movie is just kind of not good. Let's see. The other nominees for the Razzie, again, were Howard the Duck, Blue City, Cobra, and Shanghai Surprise. Prince was nominated and won for Worst Director, Worst Actor. Jeremy Benton won Worst Supporting Actor, and the Worst Song, Love or Money. Which I think that's... I don't think that's the worst song of the year. I remember
probably the theme to Howard the Duck is probably the worst song of the year.
If there was. Yeah. So a couple of fun things about it. So Prince originally, so when he's looking at this film, he wasn't immediately like, I'm going to direct this film. He had picked out this guy named John Baptiste Mondino, who was a video director. He did like Justify My Love, Violently Happy by Bjork. So like he was going to do him as a director. He wasn't available. And then asked for Mary Lambert, who was another music video director. She did like A Virgin and Material Girl and Pet Sematary, the movie.
Oh.
So she started as the director, and then there were creative differences, and she left. And then Prince was like, well, I'm going to do this myself.
Creative differences where... Never mind.
Yeah, no.
Never mind.
Oh, good. And then, so... The original lead of the movie was going to be played by this woman named Susanna Melvoin, who was Prince's girlfriend at the time. But they did a few screen tests, and like she was not able to act, so they replaced her with Kristen Scott Thomas. Again, first appearance of Kristen Scott Thomas, who is a very good actress.
Yes,
like her in almost everything I see her in. She's not good. Let's see. I think the only person who does a good job in this movie is Francesca Annis, who's the older... So I knew her from lots of Masterpiece Theater stuff growing up, but she was in the original, the David Lynch Dune. She's Lady Jessica.
Oh, that's who that was.
Yeah.
Wow.
So she's one of those actresses I've always really, really liked.
Yeah.
And she's good in it. I mean, so I would say that's the best performance in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Worst performance, I would have to say, is probably Prince.
Nope. The brother. The brother was so frickin' weird.
Yeah, but
I mean, I feel like Prince was just Prince.
That's true. That's true.
Prince has always been weird. Mm-hmm. Not in a bad way. Mm-mm. He's just always been different and weird. That's what makes him Prince.
Yeah.
The brother was just wackadoo.
Right. So let's see, whatever. Is there any knitting or fiber content in this movie? Prince's costumes are amazing.
There's lots of lace.
Lots of lace. That's tatting, right?
Yeah.
So, sure.
Sure.
I had never seen this film before. Had you?
I'd never even heard of it.
Yeah. I remember it coming out. And, like, I just remember, like... It's like my... Do you remember Purple Rain at all?
No.
Okay. So my sister...
I mean, the music, yeah, but not the movie.
So when that movie came out, my sister was in junior high. No, she was in high school. And, like, that was the biggest thing in the entire world.
Oh, I had my older cousin Michelle's. Yeah, she had the cassette tape, and I mean, she was obsessed.
Did you listen to Darling Nikki?
Well, I mean, yes, I know that song.
So that was a song that's too dirty for the radio, and you listen to it now, you're like, well, I mean, it's still dirty, but it's not like anything close.
Yeah, not like stuff is today.
Yeah. So, yeah. But I'd heard Kiss before, obviously. And then did it deserve the award it received? No. I'm going to fight on this one. This is a bad movie, but Howard the Duck is terrible in an amazing way. In a way...
I feel like...
okay, Under the Cherry Moon is a mediocre movie. Howard the Duck is a terrible movie.
No, this was awful. Under the Cherry Moon was awful. Howard the Duck was bad, but I feel like the bar is lower for that movie because it was somewhat meant to be a kids' movie. I don't think it was intended to be a kids' movie,
right?
But I think it ended up being a kids' movie.
Sure.
And so the bar is lower for a kids' movie than it is for, like, a 1930s screwball comedy for adults.
I guess we have to agree to disagree on this one.
That's not a thing. When people say, let's just agree to disagree, that just means let's just stop talking about it, is all that means.
I don't want to defend Under the Cherry Moon that much. I'm like, ooh, I'm gonna...
Yeah. This is not the hill you're gonna
die on, right? Under the Cherry Moon versus Howard the Duck. I just think that Under the Cherry Moon is... Part of it is like, okay, here's what I'm gonna say.
Okay.
Is that nothing came out of Howard the Duck that was good. Nothing. The music from Under the Cherry Moon is awesome. And
I would check your definition of awesome, and I would check how many...
Kiss is a really good song.
Kiss is a really good song. How many other great songs were there on that soundtrack? I don't remember this idea that the music in the movie was great. I was going to let it pass, but since you've thrown down this gauntlet, I will let you know that Kiss was the only good song in this movie.
I listened to the soundtrack. I liked it.
Okay.
So, perhaps I had a wicked childhood.
That's Sound of Music.
Nothing comes from nothing.
That's Sound of Music.
So, like, if a movie produces Kiss, like, it can't all be bad. Just like if Maria was...
Kiss was literally played over the credits. It wasn't in the movie.
No, it wasn't. They made out to Kiss.
No, they did not.
Are you sure?
I'm 100% sure.
I'm 100% sure that I am right, and I am going to die in this hill.
None of your arguments have...
They're all specious.
All I have to say is Howard the Duck and Under the Cherry Moon both sucked.
Yeah, I agree. It's a race to the very
But
bottom.
I will say, okay, I'll say this for Under the Cherry Moon.
It was short.
It is a piece of pop culture that exists that features... Here's this hitting the camera. That features Prince. Mm-hmm. And anything that Prince is involved in is going to be...
Interesting.
Yeah. No, even if it's bad.
He doesn't... I think one of the reasons why Prince is an amazing artist is he has his vision, and he's not afraid to go all in.
Yeah.
He's like...
Even if nobody else around him
Christopher Tracy will be the sexiest person in the world, and I'm going to demonstrate this by wearing lace pants that have a cutout stomach and a high back.
Butt clip
yeah,
back.
Exactly. You're like, okay, you go.
And high-heeled boots.
And high-heeled boots, clearly. But he has his, this is the way I'm going to make it, and sometimes I've not seen Purple Rain. Have you seen Purple Rain? I've never seen Purple Rain.
I don't know if I have or not.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's actually a cinematic masterpiece or not. But
what are we watching next?
So I don't have the random number generator, so can you do that?
Okay.
So it's 1981 to 2023.
Okay, sorry, what is the...
1981, 2023. 2007.
Have we done 2007?
I don't know, we'll find out.
Okay. I'm going to do it and reveal it to you.
Okay, just make sure it's... Remember, it's the... I think we might have done 2007 already.
Okay. No, we have not done this
Okay.
year. So, winner.
Mm-hmm.
Best Picture in the 2008 50th, I think it was the 50th Academy Awards.
Okay.
No Country for Old Men.
Oh, that's a good movie.
That's the Coen brothers.
Yes.
I don't think I've seen it. Have I seen it?
Does the idea of someone taking a pneumatic thing and then putting it to your head and killing them ring any bells?
No.
Okay, then you haven't seen it. Does
What's the
Javier Bardem wearing this page boy cut, running around killing people?
No.
Okay.
What's the I am a man? What is that movie?
That is Oh Brother Where Art Thou?
Oh, that's right. Okay. All right. 2008 Golden Raspberries. The worst movie. Mm-hmm. Worst picture.
I hope there's not a tie. I don't think I can do two again.
No.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to read to you the runners-up for worst picture.
Okay, and this is going to be worse than all of those. Okay.
I Now Pronounce You Chuck and Larry.
Okay, not seen that.
Daddy Day Camp.
Don't know what that is.
Bratz, the movie.
Okay.
The worst movie is I Know Who Killed Me.
Oh my god, it's Lindsay Lohan.
Psychological thriller film directed by Chris Silverstein.
Yeah.
Starring Lindsay Lohan, Julia Ormond, Neil McDonough, and Brian Garrity.
I'm a little excited to see that. I've never seen it. I hear it's...
The film's story revolves around a young woman who is abducted and tortured by a sadistic serial killer. After surviving the abduction, she insists that her identity is that of another woman.
Interesting. Okay.
So that's what we're watching next.
I Know Who Killed Me and...
I Know Who Killed Me
and No Country for Old Men.
No Country for Old Men.
I'm sure we can find lots of similarities between those two movies.
Lots of overlap.
Yes.
All right, well, I hope everybody appreciated our craziness and had a good time. And we will be back with another episode soon.
Huzzah!
Thanks.
All right, bye.